Unmuting.
Y'all going anywhere Memorial Day?
No, I got an alternate plan Friday.
Where's your
Me
tournament
too.
at?
I don't like it.
Might go to Cayman's. I don't know. Just
Hey, at this time.
how many days they restricted.
Good evening, everyone. I'm going to go ahead at 6 o'clock and call this City of Gallatin Council Committee meeting for May 11th, 2021 to order. And first, Connie, would you call the roll, please?
Vice Mayor Fennell,
Here.
Councilman Alexander,
Present. Present.
Councilman Fan,
Here.
Councilwoman George,
Here.
Councilman Hayes,
Present.
Councilwoman Love,
Here.
and Councilman Overton.
Present.
We have a quorum.
Thank you, Connie. We have next minutes that were submitted for approval from the April 27th, 2021
approved.
Council Committee electronic meeting. Do we have a?
Most approved.
Okay, we have a motion to approve by Councilman Overton and a second, I believe, by Councilman Alexander. Any discussion about those? If not, we will, all that are in favor of approval of those minutes, say aye. Any opposed? Okay, that passes. Okay, thank you. Next on the agenda is public recognition. If you are from the public and would like to speak to council, please come forward to the podium and give us your name and your address, and you may speak for 5 minutes.
Good evening. My name is John Boone. My address is 1137 Woodvale Drive here in Gallatin. I am a co-owner, along with my better half, Angela, of the Grill Works food truck. We started that venture back in 2017, really got it off the ground in 2019 when we were able to get the truck and get it into the system. We're licensed, we have health permits, we are insured, all of the things that, we had to cross Ts and dot Is. And since that time, we have been serving, and God has been blessing us with increase. We've served at Triple Creek for 4th of July. We've served in the community at Clearview Park. We've posted up various places. We actually we started at Harbor Freight after Fred's left, when Harbor Freight first got there. And we were told then, it's like, well, y'all can come anytime you'd like, as long as you leave room for a second food truck. There's plenty of space, and there is. And we've done well there serving at Gallatin. We wanted to initially find a brick and mortar, and I wasn't able to. So my wife said, well, let's just do a food truck. And it was, something I'd heard before I moved here from Atlanta. People had told me, you need to do a food truck. You need to do a food truck. So I said, okay, Lord, I hear you. So we did that. Just a couple of weeks ago, we were going down to Harbor Freight, where we've served many times along with other food trucks there, to set up. We had posted it on Street Food Finder and in the community that we would be there, because we had a lot of fans that come out and see us. And we were told at that point that we were not able to set up and serve there without getting a permit. I was like, oh, okay, that was new to us. And I said, well, no problem, where do you get it, who do I see? So he told us to come up and see Jennifer at planning, which we did. And she gave us a permit, we did that process, and we were able to go back. Now, there were just some things in that permit, and the permit was something that I actually got when we were first doing business licenses. The paperwork for the permit that showed temporary use permit, that, is necessary, and you can't do this here, and you can't do that there, and, but it had never been enforced. And so I was like, okay, well, I wonder why. Just before that, a fire inspector had come out and seen us and said, well, this is just an educational visit. We're wanting you to know that we're going to start putting together a permitting process for food trucks because of what happened in Chicago. There was a big fire and, people got injured and things like that. So I was like, well, why did they decide to do it now? He said, well, food trucks are a lot more profitable now. And I was like, oh, okay. Thinking in my mind, so you haven't seen my P&L. So we have held on. God is blessing us continually. We, in the middle of COVID, were deemed essential. So we were able to go out to hospitals, to communities, and serve where we weren't able to serve before because people couldn't get out to restaurants. So the business is there, but we're still, holding on. We're trying to grow a business. We've been in business, like I said, we started 2019, so we're growing. The permitting process that the temporary use thing says is that we have to have a permit, which costs $50 per quarter per location that we serve at in Gallatin, private location. First, my thought is, why are you enforcing stuff on private property? I don't want anybody coming to my house telling me what I can do as far as having things at my private property. Where at Harbor Freight, before this was taking place, we were allowed to have 2 trucks there at any time. That's a great thing because a lot of places we go, you have a savory truck like ours and you have a sweet truck. And, both trucks don't do everything. Now they're saying you can only have 1 truck there, which there's plenty of room for more than 1. So it was just different things in this temporary use permit, which I think was something that was set in place years ago. And now you're applying it and saying, this. And again, it's a little obsessive for us to have to pay $50 for every location. If I give you the names of the apartment complexes, hospitals, medical buildings, and neighborhoods, then you can see that it would be a lot.
Thank you.
I think it's my time.
That means
Thank you.
your 5 minutes are up, but we
you.
appreciate you coming forward, Mr. Boone. And this is on the agenda for tonight. Okay. Thank you. Remember to give us your name and address, please.
So my name is Jamie Joe. I'm with the Nashville Food Truck Association, and the association address is P.O. Box 40805, Nashville 37204. Do you need my personal address as well? No, okay. So I'm going to read something because I do a little bit better than just shooting from the hip here. So the Nashville Food Truck Association has been serving the greater Nashville area since 2011. We currently have over 60 active members, all small business owners from across the region. Our members are based throughout the region, ranging from Murfreesboro and Columbia, Franklin, Nolensville, and Nashville, to Hermitage, Hendersonville, Gallatin, and even Clarksville, Tennessee. Not only do we provide a place for networking with like-minded business owners, we also provide guidance and support to mobile food vendors when it comes to navigating the difficult task of the permitting process for every different municipality in Middle Tennessee. Along with guidance to our members, we have become quite active in assisting local municipalities in adjusting their mobile food ordinances. As is the case with any industry, those who do the work daily usually know the best practices for their respective industries. Food trucking is no different. According to a study conducted by the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, on average, to start and maintain a food truck annually, U.S. food truckers have to complete 45 different government-mandated procedures over the course of 37 business days and pay $28,276 on permits, licenses, and ongoing legal compliance. Again, this is annually. For an industry that many think is quite simple or easily profitable, we can assure you having to pay permitting costs in excess of many brick-and-mortar franchise fees, coupled with the task of navigating the different ones in every single town and or county, places an undue burden on those specific small business owners. Studies conducted again by the U.S. Chamber of Commerce and the Institute for Justice under the Food Truck Freedom Initiative have shown that cities who are more welcoming to food trucks in general are more welcoming to small businesses across the board. Having food trucks present provides a welcoming, community-minded atmosphere for cities across the nation. Food trucks have been serving people since the 1600s. In the 1800s, they were called upon to serve settlers traversing the West. In the early 1900s, they were called upon to feed troops on the battlefield. Still today, they have been called upon during great times of need. When the tornadoes devastated this region in early 2020, local food truckers joined together to serve those in need free of charge. When the bombing struck Nashville this December, Local food truckers joined together to feed first responders and rescue teams for weeks downtown, free of charge. When the pandemic hit and restaurants shut down, this industry, as it always does, immediately mobilized and started serving people right away. Over the past year, food trucks have been allowed to serve in neighborhoods across Middle Tennessee, bringing not only necessities to citizens, but a boost to morale as well. Oftentimes we heard, "Thank you, it means so much to get out of the house right now, even if it is just down the street to pick up our food." Or, "Thank you, it means so much to get a treat during these times. My kids have been so excited to come out." Or, "Thank you, please don't stop when the pandemic ends. Our whole family is enjoying this." We have repeatedly successfully served in times of crisis when rules and regulations are often the most important. If we can follow rules when it is needed most, please know that we can and will follow rules going forward. However, I urge you to please allow us to have a seat at the table to discuss what those rules will be. We understand the need for structure and, as it may be, the requirement for permitting. Please allow us, as an industry that has proven itself worthy time and time again, to continue serving your citizens, but please allow us to have a conversation with you as you decide what that service will look like in the future. On behalf of the Nashville Food Truck Association, I have presented each of you a blue folder that contains lots of information regarding the food truck industry and the permitting process, several studies that were done. I know it's quite extensive. It's a very thick folder. But please just feel free to browse through that. And as this conversation continues over the coming weeks, we just ask that you seek our advice as well on things that has worked and has not worked so that we can come to a suitable solution for both sides of the fence.
Thank you very much. Does anyone else wish to, for public recognition?
Brad Jolly, 236 Woodlake Drive. I just wanted to come and address the council tonight and the mayor. I've had several of my neighbors call me this week regarding the VRBOs and the Airbnb, and I just want to make sure that the council and that the city attorney is moving forward with an ordinance. They're very concerned with their property values. They're very concerned with all the things that we enjoy here in Gallatin kind of going to the wayside if somebody rents a house next to you and has a live party that night. I know we had an issue this week on Lakeshore Drive. So I just want to make sure that we are moving forward with that. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jolly. Is anyone else? Seeing no one, whoops, I do.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen of the council. It's nice to see you all again. I come here to say I would
We
be on.
need your name and address,
Oh,
remember.
Patrick Reeners at 317 Malone Drive. I've kind of heard people call it that I'm on the city side of the fence. I've always been on the city side of the fence. But this time, I'm most definitely, abundantly on the city side of the fence. I've seen possibly political terrorism by people coming to the city hall without information regarding ethics complaints that can put city council members in jail. I've seen people bring information that I've heard, I don't know to be true, to be not true. And I would hope city council would double down and realize that you guys can protect yourself, all right? If you guys are verbally attacked, if you guys are defamatorily attacked, if you guys are misrepresented, I would please ask you to look into that because it seems to be just getting worse. Now, for example, like with traffic, I don't come here to complain about traffic tonight. I come here with an idea to help with traffic. And I don't believe anybody can come up here and say that they are mad at the city and mistrust the city and then don't give them ideas but just keep complaining. Because I couldn't think that if I didn't think someone's doing their job, I could complain about something, they would do anything about it. So I'd just be wasting my time. So on 31E at least, I think we could open up the middle lane on both sides for traffic coming in, like they do in Nashville on the bridges, for a certain stretch. So we got double up the traffic coming in, then built up traffic, which I know you got to talk to the state about that, and then going out of town the same way. So it's about 2.5 hours of bad traffic. So if you double the lane, it might only be an hour of bad traffic. You could look into it. And then a couple lights where you would have red or green during different times and a sign. And of course, educate the people so we can get the people out a little quicker and in a little quicker. And that's what I think good citizens do when they come to the city council is they present facts, truth, clarity, justification, and not falsehoods, mishoods, misdirection, ambiguities, just things that show that they care, not that they're just here to start trouble. When I always talk to the city, I brought facts, evidence, truth, and it is what it is. And I think anybody coming up here and speaking that to you guys would be much more humbly accepted than possibly some people that would maybe make you turn a deaf ear to whenever they spoke. So for all it's worth, I really think that you guys were violated last week. I didn't know that it wasn't going to be on the TV or you couldn't call in, otherwise I would have been here. But I was really displeased, and I plan on going before the grand jury on several issues regarding what happened last week. And I'm very proud of that because I fought for the city for years. And I came with truth and facts, and maybe people didn't agree with me, but the way it looks now is that I know you guys would appreciate if you guys could defend yourselves where you sit today. And for what I see now, people might be taking advantage of the fact that you don't speak back. So whatever they say, possibly anybody says, there's no rebuttal, so then someone could say, well, I said this, they didn't reply. So if you guys could vote or something to go ahead and put in your charter to where if you think you've been misled, to where you can save the person's time, like click a button while you talk or while someone talks, and then starts the time again when you stop talking, so you don't take their 5 minutes with your talking, because people will complain about that and they still need the 5 minutes, and I think that would help you guys a lot, to where you guys could rebut issues that someone couldn't say, well, they didn't reply this time. It's kind of a double-edged sword if you don't use it right, but I think you should have the ability to defend yourself against anybody at the podium that doesn't provide facts or evidence and just wants to ridicule stuff. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Reiners. Does anyone else wish to address the public tonight? Seeing no one, I'll declare public recognition closed for this evening. And next, Mayor, do you have comments?
I do not. I guess my microphone's on. Not green. I do not have any comments this evening. Now I hear myself. Mr. Hayes, that's for you.
Must have made her feel bad.
Thank you. All right, next we have our agenda, and we've had a request to move number 13 up to number 1, as there are several people here for that particular item. If there are no objections, then I don't see any reason not to do so. Is that all right with you all? Okay, so the new number 1 on the agenda would be a discussion about food trucks.
Mr. Fenton, thank you.
James Fenton.
James Fenton, Economic Development here. I asked for this to be put on the agenda, have a conversation about it. I know we spoke about this as a body 2 or 3 years ago, and at that point in time, apparently we decided not to put anything out there that directly addressed this. Our codes and planning department have been doing their very best using what we have in the ordinances right now, but we don't have anything that just directly addresses the food trucks. I sent some examples to you. You've gotten some more information, and I've spoken to these folks and let them know today is just the beginning of a conversation. There are not decisions going to be made tonight. We're just going to put this out there. But I would like for us to look for something that would allow them to be here. They certainly add to a community, and I would just appreciate that from this body.
Does anybody have any? Mr. McCord's going to come up and speak about it.
Bill McCord, city planner. We do allow food trucks they are categorized under a temporary use permit. They require a temporary use permit. They also, under the zoning code, and they also require essentially business tax under the municipal code. So there's kind of a duality there. So they pay the tax and they also get the temporary use permit. And so they do identify where they would be located. The issue, I guess, is that they're mobile. And we charge people who set up, whether they're selling food from a food truck or they're maybe selling food from a vegetable stand or something of that sort, we charge them a $50 fee. Now, obviously, it's much easier to pick up and move a food truck than it is your vegetable stand or your crafts or whatever it is that you set up for a temporary use permit for. So we do allow them. We charge them, as was mentioned earlier by the gentleman, $50 for a location that they identify. So that's something that was changed and identified specifically in our code back in 2017, I believe it was. So we can tinker with that. I think there's not just this, but there are many other activities that are identified in our municipal code that don't necessarily blend well with what's in our zoning code, and that needs to be looked at not just for food trucks, but for many other things as well. And I'll get into that a little bit later in a different item, but we allow them, but we do charge for each location that they're going to set up at.
They're really popular now, and I'd hate to lose any, but.
Bill, if you will, I understand that we gotta charge, like you said, vegetable stand, $50, but that's for the entire year permit, correct? The 6
No,
months,
there's-
6 months or whatever they're there for.
Well,
right?
there are limits, and it depends on what they're doing. The facility that's setting up where the old Miracle Ford was is gonna be able to set up under a 6-month maximum stay. And many other temporary tents and mobile vendor sales, the maximum period is 30 consecutive days.
But do they pay per day or per just one permit for that?
It would be for one location. So if they stayed there for 30 days,
Okay.
then that would be a one-time permit.
And I
would
understand
last.
that, we need a permit process and we need a fee to go with that process, but I really do think somebody needs to look at making it a little bit easier, because these food trucks don't have one location, they stay in one location. These food trucks move around, some of them move around every single day. And, I think it's excessive to charge them $50 every day. I would like to see us get a permit for the city for, a month or 30 days or whatever, planning decides to do, but I think they need to have a permit to be able to go and to go to different places and set up in the neighborhoods or wherever they're gonna set up at, and not charge them every day that they're there to set up.
One reason that we do charge them for the location is because we'd want to ensure that they're gonna be setting up in a location where there's adequate parking, maneuverability, they're not creating safety or sight distance hazards.
I will add, we also have codes that goes out and inspects, and so we have to cover those costs of those inspections. I don't think any of us are opposed to doing some additional studies, but it's not something that we're going to be able to decide tonight.
Right, I
I think that
understand
we
that.
can, planning, my office, codes, and EDA, if you want to be involved, that we can all get together. Happy to talk with the Food Truck Association as well and get ideas. I know that a lot of cities do have food truck ordinances. I've started looking at some of those, so we're happy to do that.
And that's all I want. I don't expect to do anything tonight. I agree, we just need to look at it again.
Yeah, and we've
'Cause they're
got,
real popular now.
we've gotten lots of good information on some other cities' ordinances, both Brandon and Codes and James and EDA have brought us a lot of information. Then we have this from the Food Truck Association, so we're in
Great.
a good position to put something together. And
As far as zoning goes, the zoning office, we only review those that are on private property. And that was mentioned also. If they are on a right-of-way, which is regulated by other statutes or, the ordinances, which restrict sales in rights-of-way, that needs to be addressed too, perhaps if there's an exception that needs to be.
Let's address it all while we're looking at it.
yeah, that's something I think we have to figure out as well.
Yeah.
I'm all for that too, because I think one of the pluses is that they can move around and you don't always have the same one at the same location, like at the hospital for
So since, to be
employees.
sure we're addressing this and not just forgetting about it, do we need to put back on our work session for 2 weeks or a month, or what do we need to do?
2 weeks might be a little ambitious for
Let's
us
do it a
all
month.
to get all
Let's do
that
a month.
together, but maybe
Let's
for
do
a
a month
month.
away. How about that? 4 weeks, we'll put it back on our agenda, please. Thank y'all.
Great, thank you. All right.
And I also hope we address something that would be relevant to different locations, you know. If we could have where they get a permit for 30 days, I don't care if you go here for a half day here, half day, you shouldn't have to pay every time you move. Just,
I feel like we need an annual permit, and I'm just gonna come up with a figure, $250 for the whole year. Let them move where they want to. If they need inspected, we can check them out.
I think we need to look at that and make sure all of our costs are covered. Some cities do have an annual, and we'll look at all those different cities and try to figure out what a good balance would be. Make sure we're covering our costs.
I appreciate it.
Great, we love our food trucks.
yeah, please be, keep
Thank you.
encouraged. We'll get it right.
We're back on the agenda. Next will be Mr. Tuttle, our city engineer.
Been a while. I've got the next two items. There are different items, but the first one is an amendment, a proposed amendment to the Gallatin Municipal Code, Chapter 15. About 10 years ago, we updated our subdivision regulations and our zoning ordinance to not allow for bonds, performance bonds anymore, and we required checks or letters of credit from local banks. We did not amend our municipal code, Chapter 15, and what we're doing here is proposing to amend the municipal code, Chapter 15, which relates to driveway permits and right-of-way excavation permits, because these numbers are getting larger and larger as costs are being driven up, and so we just want to line up our requirements with what we already have in our subregs and our zoning ordinance for these permits as well.
So you're saying we're gonna go back to letting them put a bond up?
No, we're removing, so right now, Chapter 15 of the municipal code allows a bond, where it says that a bond can be used.
You just want a letter of credit?
We want letters of credit, and that's what this is. Actually, we've been requiring, most people have been fine with it. Nobody's ever said anything until we've been dealing with some fiber operators in and around the city, which you probably noticed all around the city, different rights-of-way within state right-of-way being tore up. And one of them was like, hey, it says performance bond, we want to give you a performance bond. We're like, no, letters of credit is all that we'll accept. And there is something within the code that does say, basically, as the city engineer determines. So we've been using that to justify the requirement for an LOC. But these folks are pushing back on us a little bit, so we'd prefer just to go ahead and change it. This is only it's really the first time that somebody's pushed back on it, so it hasn't been an issue.
It really does need to be changed so that that's another issue that, as Mr. McWhorter was discussing, where our municipal code says one thing and the zoning subregs might say something else. And as you will recall, we ran into some issues back in '08 after we went through the crisis, the financial crisis. There had been some bonds that had been put down, and if you're going to call a bond, it's a very lengthy and expensive process. And so we do allow a cash deposit, or we allow a letter of credit, and the letter of credit has to be done within 50 miles, or it has to be drawable by a certified letter, so that we're not traveling to New York or some of the other big banks to draw upon these letters of credit.
Motion to move it on.
Second.
Got a motion from Councilman Alexander, a second from Councilman Hayes. Any discussion about that? All in favor, say aye. Passed. Okay, Nick?
The next item is a resolution accepting public improvements for number 1 station. It's for a roadway called Miss B Boulevard near Cages Bend Road off of Nashville Pike. And the Planning Commission has recommended to accept the improvements unanimously, and we do too.
Motion, send it on.
Okay, that was a motion by
Second.
Councilman Hayes and second by Councilman Alexander. Any more discussion on that?
Keep calling him Alexander.
Who? Jimmy? No, Councilman Alexander just seconded it, didn't you?
Sure did, yeah.
Yeah, you good.
You weren't paying attention, Craig.
Can't hear
All right.
Good
any-
job, Ms. Love, keep it up.
All right, all in favor, say aye. Any opposed?
Did you?
So that passed. You did. You did, didn't you?
Yeah, I second, but the first time, but the first time Jimmy made.
Okay, so, all right.
You're doing good, Ms.
Okay,
Love. Keep going.
I apologize the first time.
Son.
You're doing a good job, Ms. Love, keep going.
Okay, thank you. All right, next up is David Brown to talk about the pool.
Yes, this is just a ordinance to recover our insurance claims. The insurance company has paid for this change order, so it's just taking the money from the insurance over to our expense account.
Motion to approve, to send home.
Second.
Okay, we've got a motion to approve from Councilman Alexander and a second by Councilman Overton. Any more discussion? Okay, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No, that passes. Thank you, David. Next up is David Kellogg.
Good evening. This is an ordinance for the 2021 Water System Rehabilitation Project. It's awarding the bid to JSJ Construction and authorizing the funds in the amount of $1,400,000 for that project. It's replacing water service lines, water mains, various parts of the city.
Okay.
Motion to send it on.
Second.
Okay, this time we've got a motion by Councilman Overton and a second by Councilman Hayes. Is there any more discussion? All right, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that passes.
Thank you.
Thank you, David. Next up, we have Rachel Nichols.
We have the tax rate ordinance before you for next fiscal year. Per the mayor's proposed budget that you'll see shortly, we are proposing the tax rate stay at the 80.01% rate. I appreciate Mr. DeBoard's comments last week that it wasn't the city that raised the tax rate, it was the county that raised the value of the houses, which caused the actual bill to go up. City's not raised the tax rate since I've been here.
So we're not raising taxes, is that what you're saying, Rachel?
We are not proposing a tax rate increase.
We've had several people on social media that tells us how much we're gonna have to raise taxes every year, so I just want to be sure I heard that right.
I'm glad we're not raising taxes.
I do want to chime in and make the point, though, that in my opinion, our tax rate should have been a neutral rate that was several cents higher because we have lost a lot of money to appeals. And the city of Gallatin has been impacted by that more than any other city in the Sumner County. So we're actually getting far less money in property taxes than we should be getting. And, due to the evaluations that were done and then appealed and not accounted for. And then Rachel, you might just too want to touch on the personal property, how that works. I think we're at, what, 83% this year? Is that the
Yes,
number?
every 4 years maybe, they do a sales ratio on personal property tax. And it's an adjustment by the state and the county to bring personal property taxes in line. And instead of being able to collect 100% of that amount this year, we will only be able to collect 83%. So that is a substantial deduction or reduction in anticipated revenue for this year.
It really punishes a municipality with, like ours, with a lot of industry and manufacturing when our housing values are going up. So what they're essentially saying is that the city of Gallatin, that our property values are 17% above their assessed values, so they take that off of the valuations of our business's personal property, which takes revenue away from us again, so.
Motion to send it on.
Second.
We have a motion by Councilman Hayes and a second by Councilman Overton. Any more discussion about that? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion passes. Okay, Rachel?
And next, we have a cleanup, year-end cleanup ordinance. This is just where we take a minute to make sure all our accounts are going to be in line before the end of the fiscal year. First item, we received substantially more donations for the Shop with a Cop program than we had originally budgeted. We want to get those numbers on the books. Same thing with the drug fund. We've had some additional expenses in the drug fund, and we want to get those allocated. Water and sewer, we had a long-standing employee leave, and when we paid out his sick leave balance, we need to make an adjustment for their budget to accommodate that. We have some additional donations from Project Woolhawk that will go towards that road project. We have the annual state training supplement for police and fire that are included. We have the coronavirus money that we received through the state of Tennessee from the federal government. Then we have a list of some of those COVID-related expenses. It's not the full amount because over half of our expenses occurred last fiscal year. This budget amendment is just to correct this year's budget. So those are the items included in the ordinance.
So it looks like it's 292,000.
That we're appropriating for this year. Yes, 314,000, I believe, was actually incurred last fiscal year.
Motion to send it on.
Second.
Okay, there was a motion by Councilman Overton and a second by who? Councilman Hay, well, I heard it over here
George.
too, but all right, we'll say Councilwoman George. Any more discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. That passes. Thank you, Rachel. All right, next we have some exciting news from our mayor for the budget.
I think it's exciting. I am pleased with what I am presenting as far as a budget for the coming year. A couple of things I do want to mention, just for your awareness. Realize that there is, there's some state money in this budget that is not recurring money, $400 and something thousand. And there's nothing in here, and again, this is just for your awareness and future consideration, there's nothing in here about Rescue Act funding. We're still really waiting on guidance from the federal government on how that money might be spent. I have lots of ideas and lots of doodles and suggestions, and a couple of us actually attended a presentation from the comptroller this morning, but unfortunately, they're still waiting on some guidance too. We're not even sure what the city of Gallatin will receive in the amount of funds. There's been a couple of numbers put out there, but none of that is solid or confirmed at this point. So we will, I imagine when that time comes that we will all sit together again and discuss what the options might be and how best to invest that in our community for long-term benefit. The comptroller said something this morning that is exactly what I've been saying in almost the same words, that we want to benefit the most people, do the most good for the most people. And I think that that is what we should think in terms of as we choose how to invest that money, because it could potentially be a very large sum. So with that, I'm going to move forward and do a brief presentation. The departmental budgets were sent out to the department heads last week. You all were sent a copy of the full budget. I know when you're looking at the spreadsheet, it's a little difficult to break it down, especially if you weren't in the budget meetings to know exactly what's in what line item. This will help you to some degree. You do have a copy of the PowerPoint that we handed out prior to the meeting. I urge you to take it with you, look it over, call me with any questions. Certainly if you have any tonight, ask those as well. I've gotten very few questions from department heads about it. Actually, I think I've gotten 2, but I'll move forward. So basically, I'm presenting a budget to you all this evening of $43,257,402. That's $38,620,157 operating. Our revenue projection is $41,645,776, and our capital investment is $4,637,245. Just to give you a look back, remember 2021 and how conservative we went on consideration of the pandemic. Our budget last year was $38.4 million, and this year is the number that I'm presenting to you. It does represent a 12.65% increase, but in that, I think we're making a lot of solid investment. Just to show you some numbers, to kind of show you what the sales tax revenue has looked like. This is looking at 2018 through 2021, the sales tax growth that we have seen. Even in this past year, we have grown substantially. I am cautiously optimistic that it will continue, but I'm cautious because I wonder how much the stimulus funding from the federal government has impacted those sales tax dollars. And so we are projecting sales tax growth in the coming year to be the lowest of these years, just to be conservative. This looks at our property tax revenue, again, 18, 19, 20, 21. It is growing, there's more homes, that's where that number's coming from. Regardless of this, it should be substantially more, but we're where we are and we're getting what we want, we're getting that. When I started in office back in 2015, back then 1 cent equaled a little under $100,000. Now it's bringing in $163,000. I put on there, appeals are still an impact. I've already mentioned that to you. No reason to bring that up again. Well, there is, because you should know that not all the appeals are processed at this point. So that impact is continuing until they are processed. I mean, Ms. Kittrell's the one that has to write those refund checks, and it's just taking away money that we thought we had to spend. Moving along, this is what the revenue versus expenditures is going to look like. roughly $6 million in operating revenue versus operating expenditures, leaving us about $2.5 million to invest in capital. However, when you take our overall revenue, which includes that state money that's not recurring, not our operating revenue, versus our general fund expenditures, the difference is about $1.6 million. So that's adding in your capital with your operating expenses and comparing it to your overall revenue. So this is how I'm proposing that we fund that overage. Again, our total budget, 43.2 roughly. Our projected revenues at 41, 645, 776. We have unused bond funds at this point dating back several years. It's projects that are complete, unused, and we have $1,017,007 that we can use to fund some of our capital projects. And then we have reserve fund. We have a healthy reserve. I'll go into that in just a little bit, but I'm proposing that we use $594,000, roughly $595, to make up the difference on capital. Remember, we always have to budget our we always have to balance our operating expenses against what our projected operating revenue is. It is perfectly legal, and the comptroller will not frown upon us using reserve funds to fund capital expenditures or those unused bond funds. So again, just a reminder that we're at a negative 1.6 overall, but we're making it up with those unused bond funds and some reserve funds, and we are investing well in capital. The departmental requests this year were just over $46 million. The budget as presented is just over $43 million. The budget this year put $7.7 million in our rainy day fund, and we are left with an additional reserve of $6.6 million. Let me break down for you that fund balance detail. Our surplus per our audit last year was, because it hadn't been done this year, was 18.7. We take away the carryover projects from 2021, which was at $3 million. Then we take out the mid-year appropriations, mostly those were for the fire department, that's $777,000. Take away the new rainy day fund, that's 7.7 I mentioned, and then the surplus that we're using to fund additional capital, which is that $594,000, and that will leave us with a fund balance of 6.6. So we are looking at a very healthy reserve, over $14 million. So that's something I think this council should feel really good about. I want to do that because I think we're looking ahead to a lot more investment, both in our people and in our capital. And this sets us up well to be able to do that. This is a breakdown of just the departments and their operating budgets. I show you this, but it's really, especially, it just is to show you kind of what the growth is year to year. But realize one department may have had one capital investment last year, or in smaller departments, they can have a huge percentage and really a small increase in budget. So that just shows you kind of the increase and decrease per department in this year's budget. So that's just a list of all of the departments with their increase, decrease percentage-wise from 2021 to 21-22. On our operating expenses, you may find this interesting. It just shows kind of the community enhancement growth investment change, our community services, that's kind of where you find like the library and the chamber and the health department. The ACES program, the bond expenses, economic development, and insurances. Going over to utilities, and realize this is all rate funded. This doesn't have anything to do with our general fund, but I want to show you these. On our utilities, we're looking at revenue of $17.8 million. $17.8 million and almost $19 million in expenses. At gas, the revenue is at $16.854, expenses at $18.435. Stormwater, the revenue's at 1.9, expenses at $2 million. Do I have these backwards, Rachel? Yeah, that's right. Okay. Expense at $2.02 million, $2,020,936. Sometimes it's hard for me to say it the other way. And then in our environmental services, the expenses at 3.132, revenue almost 7. So those are the utilities in a very quick snapshot. Looking at our positions with the City of Gallatin, we had 15 new position requests. We had 17 reclassification requests. So I'll take you first through the new position request. In our codes department, we request, there were 2 inspector ones requested. We have put 1 in this budget. The engineering had a stormwater project manager. Remember, that's funded by our stormwater utility. And that is funded in the budget. At fire, they request an assistant training officer. I did not put that in the budget for this year. I think it'll be, something to discuss once we have a permanent chief in place down there. In IT, there was a request for an administrative assistant, not included in the budget. Parks and Recreation, these 2 requests are kind of unusual. They're actually not full requests because they were transitions from part-time to full employees, and I have included both of those. At the police department, they requested 5 police officers. We put 3 in the budget. And at Public Works, they have 2 general laborers for streets requested, which I included, and an environmental services equipment operator. So that shows what was requested and what was approved and the grade at which they were put in the budget per my approval. There were 17 reclassification requests. You will see in here there were several from the codes department, and I did not put any of these in as approved, and the reason that I did not is because last year they had several reclassifications that were requested actually for these same positions that they're requesting reclassifications for. They were not approved in the budget, but they made their way through the approvals with HR. Basically, the codes department thought they were approved. They were not, by my understanding, but they ultimately happened with HR. And so we're not going to redo those because everybody else last year was held off on any reclassifications. In EDA, we've got the Special Projects Director going from a GP to a GV based on different responsibilities and increased work. Engineering, Project Manager 1 to Project Manager 2. Human resources, these are kind of unusual situations too that I want to address just briefly. Both our director and our assistant director were hired at kind of very entry levels of their position. And they were hired basically at step 1s. If I had been asked, I would have approved it at a step 4. That's real typical for us to do. Based on education and experience. Both of these positions have very strong support and very strong background supporting that. And so I have put in here, the request was for a GC to a step 13. I have put a GC 8 in there because that would be based on where, we would do a step 4. I should back up. We would always do a step 4. Upon request, I will go up to a 6 if it can be supported. And so you add the time of service to that, and that puts that in 8 and a 6. And so that's why those are where they are. In the mayor's office, administrative assistant from a 1 to a 3. And really that's something that I should have requested of you all several years ago. when the structure of that office actually changed and that administrative assistant took on many additional duties to support the city. Police department, they are moving their records clerks from records clerk positions to admin assistants. That's a GH to a GK. And then at public utilities, meter readers are becoming utility inspectors. The equipment operator 2, we are changing the classification for them from a GI to a GK, and then the gas operators from GJs to GL. At Public Works, there's a traffic signal control tech that we are moving to a GL6. Again, that's similar to what we're doing with HR positions. We were also asked to define for future promotional opportunities the different classifications for those control positions, and we will do that, but there's no cost associated with it. And then we're moving one general laborer to a maintenance services specialist, that's a GB to a GF. And finally, an equipment operator 2, very parallel to what we're doing over at Public Utilities from a GI to a GK. I should also mention, and council, you have this information, I think you've seen it before, but there was a draft that was given to us on a public safety study for police and fire. You have the draft that was specific to fire, and then you have the actual spreadsheet that was specific to police, and that just supports the changes that are made in the budget for those two positions. For those two departments. As you'll recall, the recommendation on the fire department was simply a 2.5% COLA, and the intent was to make both of those public safety changes in last year's budget, but we did not because of COVID-19. So this year, to address both the fire department recommendation and for the other for the other employees of the city of Gallatin, I am proposing a 2.5% COLA increase. That cost is about $690,000. I should mention, you will see this as we get into, well, you'll see it in the budget. I do have a pay study proposed in the coming year's budget. I think that, these studies were actually done in 19, and so we are actually putting them in quite late, and I think that the data at this point is probably significantly different. And so I think it is time so that we may remain competitive, both with our private sector market and our public sector neighbors, to do another pay study in the coming year, and that is also included in the budget. Moving on to the capital budget, again, this is a lot of lists, but you can go through and see what is funded and what is not funded. I've done it by department. You'll see general fund, admin, mayor, that's the mayor's office. Actually, it should have just said admin at that point, but some of this I copied and pasted from spreadsheets, and I didn't get it all corrected as I should have. But basically, first you'll see the administrative budget, mayor's office, the finance, the city recorder, the city attorney. None of that is particularly magnificent or fascinating. Down to IT, you'll see that we're always investing a lot of money, particularly in our security software and equipment, which has to be done. The HR office, the engineering office, we put $1 million in repaving for the year. You will see something unusual because you see where they requested $100,000 for roads and funded $600, and I actually, what I did was I moved that GHS Backage Road. I took $500 from that and put it with roads because we're still unsure where we are on that, but the money is close to being there if we decide to do it. $150,000 for intersections. Down in planning, not much. Codes, not much. Police, we are doing their police vehicles as requested, their land system replacement, and then machinery and equipment is requested. At fire, you'll see what is funded there. The vehicle accrual, I didn't put the full amount, but I put $400,000 there. Kind of the same with their general machinery and equipment. When you're looking at the PPE, I actually took $70,000 out because remember we just did an allocation to do that. Well, you see that grant match, that was kind of repetitive. It's kind of either or, so it's covered regardless with that PPE line item. Sidewalks at public admin, we got 25,000. Street maintenance, we have funded the Class 5 dump truck, not the Class 8. And then, let's see what else in here. The Civic Center, I've got, David and I are kind of back and forth. I'm not really sure exactly where it belongs, but let's talk about Parks and Recreation as a whole. We've got some good investment there. We are planning to do a Parks and Recreation master plan. That is pretty much a must-do per state law, and for us to continue to be able to receive money that comes from the feds to the state, to the parks. And so we have got to get a master plan done. We've talked about it, but we're not actually making that happen until this coming budget year, and I'll be glad to get that done. At the golf course, you'll see that there was a reduction. Basically, we're not doing improvements on the maintenance shed and the paving around there. Triple Creek Park, I can't remember specifically what some of these things are for, but do have some in there for Thompson Park renovation, some things that we need to do at the skate park there. Triple Creek, I believe there's basketball goals there, municipal park repairs, that's $80,000. And so two different places, I've got that $100,000, which will cover our master plan, and then I've got some playground equipment for Clearview. Football lights, David told me that was very, very low on his priority list, and he would like to put that other places. The $2 million that was moved over, that was for some big idea projects, and hopefully we'll be able to get there potentially from these Rescue Act funds coming down, and the rest is as you see it. So basically, we had $7.6 million in capital requested. We're funding 4.6, and we're not funding almost 3. So I feel really good about what is there, and I feel like we're getting a lot done. Just to show you where we are on our debt services, our 2022 payment's going to be $2.7 million. Our principal balance is $27,880,000. Our interest balance is at $7,485,220. Talk just a little bit about community enhancement requests. We had total requests of $291,541. This shows you the organizations that we funded, and we didn't deny anyone funding this year. We did not fund everyone fully, but you will see what we previously funded them, if we did, what they requested, and what the funding is that we are recommending this year. If you'll recall, we do the community enhancement request grants like a mini United Way allocation. What we do is we have the people come in, we have them supply us with their budget, their board of directors, their organization information, and what they are seeking funds for. They come in, they spend some time with us, they talk about the organization, they answer questions for the panel, and then the panel at the end of the day makes determinations about what kind of funding we feel good about providing for them in the coming fiscal year. So you'll see all the organizations listed, the funding that is recommended. There's 2 pages of that, and ultimately we are funding I'm recommending that we fund $258,500. So there was about a $30,000 difference in what was requested and what is actually budgeted here. Just a reminder, the departmental request was, $46.3 million. The budget is presented today is $43,257,402, $7.7 million in our rainy day fund, leaving us with other reserve. I don't think that's the right number. I'm sorry, I'm going backwards. I should just ask Rachel because she would know. Other reserves should be $6,615,232. So that was the slide that I did not correct after we went back and forth about my poor math skills. So there we are. That's our total budget, our operating budget, our revenue projections, and our capital.
Motion to send it to council.
Second.
Well, we've got a motion to send it to council from Councilman Overton and a second from Councilman Fennell.
Any questions, criticism?
I've got one.
Good job.
question.
If there,
I think Councilman Fennell said he had something first, and then Alexander, and then.
My thing is, you was talking about the Backage Road. Is that the road that was partnering with Dale Phillips and trying to do? And that's $500,000 we set aside, so we're applying that towards more paving?
No. That's just roads in general. We continue to have discussions with the school board. They're supposed to be telling us when we can come show where it might be, but we've not done that yet. So we don't know if that's dead in the water or not. So that money is in the budget for roads, but not necessarily under that line item.
Okay.
Councilman Alexander.
Mayor, if you go back to page 16, I think it was, about the codes.
Let's see. Okay.
Not the one. Try the next page, 17. Okay, that one there. We're not approving any code inspectors. Is that what you're saying here?
These are reclassifications that are requested, and I am not recommending that we do these reclassifications because last year, these same positions were reclassified and they were not approved in the budget, but they actually happened. I think that there was some disconnect between my presentation and the actual budget. And I think what happened last year was I had the approved ones in red and the unapproved ones in yellow, and there was confusion about that. So it somehow got moved through HR and they were approved. So because we didn't allow any reclassifications last year, they actually got moved ahead. And so they got moved up already. And so to be fair, when nobody else was eligible for any classifications, I'm leaving them where they are at this point.
so they already reclassified?
They were reclassified to their current position
Okay.
last year when it was not budgeted, but
I see.
it happened, so.
Okay, you just made this mud as water.
Huh?
So they are requesting for these 3 inspector, but they're not being approved. Is that what I'm hearing? Or they were approved and not put down? Or?
No. These 4 positions were reclassified last year to Codes Inspector 3 and Data Quality and Training Admin. This year, they're requesting a new classification. And I'm saying I don't think we should do that because they got new classifications a year ago, and therefore, I don't think that we should go and reclassify them again.
Okay. Even though they asked for it? I'm just trying to get
Yeah.
clear because I'm just
Last
confused.
year, they asked for it, it was denied, they thought it was allowed, and so they were able to move theirs forward where no one else did. And so, in essence, the people who are in these positions were already moved forward.
Oh,
And to a classification that was higher than they were at originally. Does that make sense? And so we.
I'm just a little slow, but I've just.
No,
I'm just
it's very,
confused by
very
that.
confusing.
I know that, our city is growing, and we put more on our inspectors. I just want to make sure that they are in a position where they can, do the job.
Oh, I do too, and they do an amazing job. And I'm just trying to be kind of fair across the board with all of our employees. We had a similar thing happen with our Parks Department, and one position was approved. Well, actually, one position essentially got through the process, but the other one I made wait until this budget year because we became aware of the confusion over that. Again, it was a disconnect between what I actually had in the budget and the, I guess, color coding of my presentation.
Thank you, Mayor.
I've got a question, Mayor.
Till Eileen, who's next.
Okay, thank you. My question is on the appeals process. And you said that we are writing checks. How is that possible with values the way they are?
You appeal property, and it is, the appeals at this point are appeals with the state. Now, I think you can still appeal with our local property assessor. And if that's the case, then he can adjust that to keep the rate neutral. But at the state, we're just stuck. If the state goes and grants appeals, they don't then take that into consideration and readjust our tax rate. We have to refund that money. And see, what happens is the appeals process with the state takes a very, very long time. So they may have paid, I don't know, let's just say a business. They paid, based on their valuation, $100,000. Well, the state approves their appeal, and then their new tax is $75,000. Well, we have to pay them back $25,000 for every year that they've paid that, with interest. It is a really, puts a city in a really bad position, especially, it wouldn't be happening if we weren't in this growth trajectory, but yeah, it's a very unfortunate situation.
Steve?
I got a question about revenue. Does the county furnish any revenue for the Parks Department?
What now?
Counties give us any revenue?
No.
But everybody in the county uses the Parks Department, right? I know my kids did when they were coming up and when we lived in the county.
Yeah.
This is about the traffic light on Airport Road. We need it, but most of the people that want it were from the county. You know, we're splitting the parking garage with the new Justice Center. Why shouldn't they have to split some of this?
I don't disagree with you, but
Maybe we should ask them.
I don't mind asking, but we've been down this road a few times.
When I was a
Gallatin,
commissioner, we brought that up for the city of Gallatin, trying to get some lights where the school system was using the lights in the park system, and it went nowhere.
yeah, and just a few years ago, we tried to get them to pay for their portion of Fire Station 5 because there was an ambulance bay going in there for Sumner County EMS to serve all the citizens of the county. I think, Gallatin doesn't have a lot of representation on the county commission. The way that the districts are drawn, a lot of the people that represent parts of Gallatin probably don't have the tight awareness with the city of Gallatin who as some people who live in the city of Gallatin and circle within it a lot do. It's
Think about putting up toll gates at every road coming in and out of the county, maybe.
yeah, the state doesn't allow tolls.
Okay, anybody else
I
have
mean,
a question?
It don't seem fair. We pay county and city taxes, and they benefit from all the city taxes.
Well, I mean, and I was having this conversation when I was talking about, because a common rhetoric that I'm hearing a lot from the county is that, the city of Gallatin is costing the county residents. We're causing, their taxes to go up. And so we actually, Rachel and I and David Lawing with the county actually did a bit of an exercise to understand exactly how much revenue the city of Gallatin does contribute. And we contribute, if you based on per capita, we contribute very substantially to the county's overall revenue stream. But it's kind of a give and take. We, as a city, yes, we have more people going to school, but, there's a whole lot of roads in the county that have to be paved. So, we take care of the ones in the city. So it's kind of a give and take. And to me, it's kind of the dynamics of maintaining a county that has a lot of complementary areas. We have our rural areas, we have our larger cities, we have our smaller cities, and it's kind of what we do for each other to have a successful and dynamic, county and cities. Yeah. And really, you're talking about, it doesn't seem fair. I mean, I feel like Gallatin gets a lot put on them by the county because we're the county seat,
That's true.
you know? So, they, like,
Anybody else? Well,
Good
we've
job,
got-
Mayor.
Yeah, good job.
Yeah,
Appreciate
it's
that.
great.
Thank you.
Great, and we've got a motion on the table. Any more discussion?
Second.
I did already, I thought.
Yes, I think you did. Okay, yeah, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, that passes. Thank you, Mayor. Oh, that was a good presentation, too. All right, now we're going to see or hear from Bill McCord on the next 3 items.
He keep it short.
All right.
Okay, Larry's taking care of me. This first item that I have to present tonight is a request for rezoning of a little under a half acre of property located on.
Bill, we're having a hard, Susan and I
Yeah,
in
we had an
particular-
issue with the planning commission meeting last night.
It was hard
Put
to
over at
hear
the
last
side,
night.
Bill, it'd be easier.
Move
Right
this
there,
around
there you
and
go.
make, is that better?
Yeah.
I know y'all at the podium had people at the podium last night had difficulty hearing, so people in the back of the room can hear fine, but, so hopefully this will help. Okay. We need to go to, well, I think this will be okay. This is a request for rezoning of just under half acre of property on North Water Avenue. And the applicant wants to rezone it from commercial general to MRO and develop 4 homes on the property. The area properties are primarily single-family homes. The developer wanted to build a series of attached units initially and then came back with a different plan. This is one of the houses that's on the property now. And that's good. The proposed plan is to retain that house as part of one of the 4 units and build the 4 homes, 2 which, including the existing house, will face onto North Water, and then 2 onto Trimble, I think it's Trimble Avenue, to the west or behind these homes. Trimble's a really narrow, old street, and they're going to extend that street a little bit and provide driveways off of that. The homes would be, this would be a typical home that they would build, and it would have brick and/or stone skirting around the base of the home and then built with batten board and/or hardy board. This is a photograph of a home in the immediate area. There's another one, and there's another one. So these homes would be very similar in scale and materials built as the existing home that's on the property now and those homes in the area. So the Planning Commission did review this request and recommended approval, and we also recommend approval.
Motion to send it on.
Second.
Okay, thank you. We have a motion by Councilman Hayes and a second by Councilman Fennell. Is there any more discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Thank you.
Okay, council, this next item is also a request for rezoning with a preliminary master development plan for the Red River Road townhomes. This project would be located on Red River Road just to the west of the intersection of Long Hollow Pike and Red River Road, as shown on the aerial photograph marked here. And this is immediately located, and let's see if you, unfortunately, the cursor does not show up on my pointer. Doesn't show up on the screen. I didn't know that. But anyhow, this property is about a little less than 8.5 acres. Getting feedback now. 8.5 acres, and it is undeveloped. It is located adjacent to CG Commercial to the east, which is the darker red. And that property has a machine shop on it. It's more of a heavy commercial or even light industrial. And we do allow some limited light industrial in the commercial district, so that's what's on that property. And there's also a body shop or a form of body shop on that property. To the north is properties that are zoned R6, including the recently approved Habitat for Humanity development on to the northwest corner of the subject property. And then to the west is the Gallatin Housing Authority Public Housing Complex. And to the southwest is property that's currently zoned R15, that's shown in the kind of the light yellow color on this map there. And to the south across Red River Road is a property that's zoned, I believe it's PNC, if I'm not mistaken. That is where Witt's Barbecue is, and then there's a convenience store that shows up on the purple with CSL. So a lot of commercial around here and higher density housing for the most part, except for the immediate properties to the west across Red River Road. The applicant is requesting a rezoning to develop a master plan to rezone to R6, which is a high density residential district, to build 83 condominium type HPR, horizontal property regime housing units with a private street and a driveway or private drive that would connect to Red River Road immediately across from the driveway that serves Witt's Barbecue. And then it would be a loop street with the HPR condo type units surrounding that road, and have an open space in the center, and then they would provide buffer yards on either side, including along Red River Road. The housing units would be attached units, and these are a good rendering of what those would look like. They would not have garages, and they would have front-loaded, and then they would have a parking area in front of each of these units, but they would be, again, HPR-type units. And there's a kind of a sketch-up of what those would look like as well. We did a little trip generation analysis. This doesn't show up good on this screen. It is in your agenda package. But this was just provided to give you an indication of what the trip generation rates would be based on the existing zoning and possible other development scenarios that could occur on this property, including the applicant's request for the 83 units. The trip generation rates are higher for single-family homes per unit than they are for attached units per unit. So he's going to adjust that, I think, where it is more legible than what we've got there. Let's see if we can get that, because I want to point that out to you. There, that shows up a little better. So under the existing zoning, if they were able to build with the 10,000 square foot lot, single family, they'd get a yield of close to 30 units. And that would generate about 286 daily trips. If they went with a conditional use permit, which allows multifamily in the R10, they could get more units. And as I mentioned, multifamily units generate less trips per unit than a single-family detached. So they get actually more units but less trip generation, 279. And if under their proposal with R6 zoning, they could get, they're proposing 83 townhomes, and that would generate 482 daily trips, which is, of course, more than what the current zoning would allow, or current zoning would yield. So I wanted to point that out. That was an issue that was brought up at the Planning Commission. We presented that. There was some discussion at the Planning Commission about impacts of traffic on this area roadways. And actually the Planning Commission chair had suggested maybe a traffic modification at that intersection that's just to the southeast corner of the property, and that perhaps a roundabout might work. That's a state roadway system, so it would certainly be a more expensive and less proportionate to the impact of this project to build such a thing. It's not impossible. Nick might want to speak about that as well. But I just wanted to let you know that the Planning Commission is looking for solutions as well in their recommendations. and their evaluations of these changes. So I know Nick has a proposal for a roundabout a little bit further west of here near his office, but that's really not directly impacting this site. So this property's driveway would be, as you can see, the Witt's Barbecue there on the left with the brown roof, and the driveway connection to Red River Road. That's where the driveway for this site would be instead of roundabout. But the Planning Commission did recommend essentially R6 zoning, but with an additional condition to dedicate or identify additional right-of-way necessary to accommodate project traffic. So the Planning Commission did review that based on the applicant's request. The Planning Department believes, because of the way the comp plan is written, that MRO zoning would be more appropriate. It's a mixed-use zoning, and it's specifically identified in this character area. And because of particularly some of the adjacent uses that we have and the zonings that are established there in the character area, that MRO zoning, it would still allow for them to obtain the yield and the design of that plan that they have. It would just provide greater flexibility on the use of the property. So that's the little difference that we have in our recommendations. So we're asking that you consider either one of those recommendations for review at least first reading.
I got a question. Bill, in MRO, they can put apartments and stuff there, and they can't in R6, correct?
They can put apartments in R6. Yeah. This is not an apartment, though.
I will say that this was a split vote. I think it was 4-3.
Right.
For this, because that is right where Long Hollow and Red River Road meet. And it was brought up that it's almost impossible to go back towards town on Long Hollow at some of these, almost all the time, because the people coming out of there would be right in that intersection. If they're trying to turn left to go back towards town, at lots of times during the day, but especially at the peak times, there's a really long line of cars on Long Hollow. Red River's not really the issue. It was Long Hollow Road. So that was why John Pereira was trying to find solutions with a roundabout or whatever. We did agree that something needs to be done in the future there anyway, because it's where people are coming off 386, coming to town, and it just meets there, and it's a bad traffic area.
What was the vote out of the Planning Commission?
4-3.
4-3.
Nick, you got any recommendations on that intersection?
Well, I don't think, thanks though, Bill, I appreciate it. We have a proposal for a road to extend Maple Street over the railroad track and tying into Long Hollow Pike. I do believe that will help remove some traffic from this area and from that intersection. I don't think that Mr. Perrier's idea of revising the intersection here, this particular intersection, is bad. But it will be very expensive because you're probably going to need to purchase at least one, if not both, of those convenience stores to make it happen. I think that in the end, it would be really nice, and I think something Gallatin would be proud of, but it would be something that we would want to really think long and hard about how we spend our money. But I do think a roundabout would function well here. You just have to deal with all of the things that are wanting to be accessed right there in the location. Speaking of which, the trailer park that's to the south, that's just off of the picture here, the way this is laid out, there's no way that you could have that trailer park accessed from here. So it probably would need to have a fifth leg to the roundabout, which is possible for a roundabout, not possible for a traditional intersection. So you would need to be looking at a fifth leg coming off somewhere in the middle of that roundabout to access the trailer park that's back there.
So did I hear you right, that if a roundabout is done, then more than likely we'll have to purchase some of this property from the two stores?
Both of them.
Both of them.
And the reason I say that is because of how the stores would need to be accessed. Right now, the driveways that are shown for those stores, if someone needed to turn into one of them, it just basically shuts down the whole intersection. Those access points are too close to the intersection. You see where the trailer park comes off to the south. So if someone wanted to turn into that trailer park coming from downtown, they have to go through the roundabout and then make that left-hand turn after they get through the roundabout. And now they're potentially into the queue of the people that are going into town.
I understand now.
So they just can't, they won't be able to turn across the traffic if it's really any hour of the day, unless it's just barely any traffic going through there on an off hour. And so you really need to remove the entrances that are close to the intersection. If you can do that, this will work great. But with both of the convenience stores needing to be accessed and the trailer park, it just doesn't function.
So, Bill, what's your recommendation, rezoning?
It was also suggested by a different planning commission member that we approve it for R8 instead of R6, just to lower the number at least. But that didn't follow through.
You said to approve for R8 rather than R6?
That was just a suggestion from another person on planning.
What's your suggestion?
Planning department, we would recommend MRO.
What kind of effect, again, would that have on the property developer? I mean, as far as,
Well, the conditions of approval of providing additional right-of-way, not necessarily right-of-way for a roundabout as shown here conceptually, but additional right-of-way for Red River Road would still apply. So the conditions would be applied, and the site plan that is presented, the master plan, would still be applicable, it'd just be MRO zoning.
number of units would be?
Still be the same.
So what's the difference?
Well, one's high-density residential, there's opportunity for if there are some other type of proposal that comes along in the future, such as an office park or some sort of other uses, mixed uses that are allowed in MRO, you have more flexibility than you do in R6.
But is there a representative of the developer here that would address that?
Yes, a representative is here.
Andy, would y'all be okay going MRO?
Andy Leith, Greenland Design, representative of the project. Yes, sir, as Bill stated, or Mr. McCord stated, it doesn't really affect the plan as we presented it. And if the city is more comfortable with MRO in the future, I've spoke to the client today, Mr. Danny Hale, about the project, and he's all for it. If the city would rather have MRO instead of R6. When we chose R6, we were just trying to match what we were touching.
But you're not, I mean, right now, you're still planning on putting 83 units for townhouses, or they are townhouses, right?
Yes, ma'am, but with the horizontal property regime being
And the
individual
advantage of
ownership.
MRO would be just if you changed your mind, really, and wanted office.
From my perspective and from the owner's perspective, whether the city wants to give R6 or MRO, it's 6 one, half a dozen the other to us. But I can see what Mr. McCord's saying in the future, if this property redevelops, being MRO gives you more commercial uses in there as well.
No?
I personally think that that's what we probably ought to do, MRO, if that's what planning recommended we do with it.
I'll second.
Make a motion?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, well, we have a motion to send it on and a second. Is there any more discussion?
It was a motion to send it on as MRO.
Oh, okay, right. Susan just reminded me that that motion was to send it on to council as
MRO.
MRO zoning instead of R6. And that was okay with you, your second too, right? Okay. Well, I still think that's a lot of units to add right there onto that particular piece of property, but all in favor, say aye. Any opposed? No. Okay. Only 3 people voted?
Silence means yes, so.
So what do we need to do? Okay. All right, well, we'll move on then to, I think Bill is next for the discussion on common code violations and enforcement.
Council, this is something we've talked about previously. I think even 2 weeks ago, we had mentioned about some issues that we're having in the city. And this is really a variety of code violations, not just necessarily zoning violations. So some of these are property maintenance issues that zoning doesn't necessarily get into. Some of them overlap, and some are building code issues. So I was going to present this, and Brandon might be able to get up and talk about some of these as well. But I have a collage of photographs, really gives you an idea of what some of the current things we're dealing with is. Again, this is violations of the municipal code, including the International Building Code, and violations of the zoning code. We have both the planning department and the building department and the police department, which provides enforcement for various codes being in violation. So the first thing we'll get into is signs. We're having a lot of folks essentially looking for work. We're looking for workers, I should say, maybe looking for work as well. So these are popping up all over the place. They're not allowed in our code. You could get a banner as a temporary sign permit, so you can have banners and get them, but for temporary purposes only. But for by and large, most of the folks are not going that route. So here's a typical one that we have. Sometimes they get set up in the right of way even. In this case, Nashville Pike here, we have a bunch of banners that are in the right of way. So we're having problems with that increasingly. Here is a sign in the right of way that's a banner sign, and it's not permitted. We don't allow signs in the right of way unless they're erected by the regulatory agency, such as stop signs and things of that sort, speed limit signs and so forth. Street signs with the stop sign there. That's a okay sign to have. But advertising and sale of merchandise and all that stuff in the right of way is prohibited by our code. But it's occurring. You see this stuff like this all the time, advertising their business in the right of way. And then we also have signs where superfluous signs, like I would say, or excess signage, where in this case there seems to be certain types of products that thrive on placing these types of signs up. And so these are a violation as well. It's often difficult to get enforcement on this. Sometimes they pop up in the window. This one happens to be tacked on the side of the building. We have others, and I want to make it clear that the sign in violation here is not the church. It's the building behind it. So here we have a banner that's just attached to the side of the building. And it gets worse because it drapes over a car too. And we don't allow signs on cars like that. So that is a long-term violation. And there's even a cabinet or a wall sign that doesn't have a panel on it. So there's multiple violations have been occurring on this property, and we've had some difficulty trying to get compliance. Here is some of those excess signs selling a particular product down at the bottom of this permanent sign. It's never ends. And here's another one here. Just want to show you this business. Initially, it looks like there's no issue, but the issue is the washboard. The sign that says washboard is not a permittable sign. You could have a sign on the building like that, but this one happens to be just a banner that's attached to the building. Again, this is those excess signs that are like the lottery. We don't regulate content, but we regulate the number of signs. So the lottery and cigarettes seem to be the big issues that they're advertising for with these excess signs.
Let me ask you a question.
Yes, sir.
Real quick. I mean, you can go through this all day long, and we know all this, but why are we not enforcing this?
We're just not getting people to comply.
I mean,
So they're essentially thumbing the nose at the staff and not replying to the.
you're sitting there going through these pictures that we all know everything about, and I've talked to you about it hundreds of times. But my question is, why can we not enforce it?
Well, what we want to try to avoid, but maybe we can't, is to send them to the city court. In the city code and municipal code, they can bring these items directly to the council. That's what it still says.
Okay.
I don't think that's what you want to see each time, but we can do that if that's what y'all want to address it as. I just want y'all to know that there's certain places in town that either are not aware that we have sign regulations, or they are aware and they're not willing to comply.
Are they fined?
So they need more enforcement or more force with the enforcement.
But, I
maybe.
mean, because you and I've talked about it before, I mean, is it something where you need more help? Is it something that we need to add somebody to
I can let
enforce
you,
this, to do that? What?
help would, yes, and I think Chief,
I mean, we had a
Would
group,
agree
I
that-
think, one time that was wanting to volunteer, correct? To look at stuff like this, right?
yeah, we did. We did, and some of those have been addressed, and some of them had to be
And
permitted.
they came back that, they were sending stuff to y'all, but y'all were not doing anything with it, so they said, the heck with it. We're not gonna do it anymore.
Well, because I think what happened is the expediency. We have a process. If it's signing the right of way, we can jerk it right then. If it's on somebody's property, there's a process you have to go through and send notice to these folks.
If you bring them to city court, is it maximum $50 fine? Is that what it is? So
Yeah,
some
that's
people
all it is.
gonna come to court and leave it up there for 2 or 3 months till they can get in court and pay the $50 because it's worth it for them having a signage there. So is there a way we can put more teeth in it, Susan?
Limited by state law to $50, but you can cite them every day. Every day they're in violation.
Okay.
So that's, why are we not doing that?
Well, we have one person in zoning that does enforcement, and that person also issues temporary use permits, sign permits, and things of that sort. So it's really a kind of a quarter of a position, zoning enforcement officer and a permit tech type of position. So it's not, the
mean, it
demand
just-
is greater, let's
It
put
just
it that
seems
way.
like they could take one section of the city at a time and just go and look and say, okay, you're out of compliance, Here's your citation.
Yeah, and well, we certainly can and have done that. We just haven't taken them to the city court yet or brought them here to you.
Well, why not take them to court? Why?
Well, if that's what you want us to do, then we'll take every one of these to court. And
I mean,
Well,
the way the city's growing, you've got to start.
But I want to interject. I think part of the reason that they're bringing it to this council is as soon as they start trying to enforce it, then they're calling the mayor's office and they're calling the council members and they're complaining because they've always been allowed to do these things. And so we have to kind of get on board together and say, car dealers, you can't put your cars out in the right of way. Convenience stores, you can't cover up your windows and stick things all over your parking lot in your building. And I mean, it's just, we've
always had that rule in place where you can't do that. We just haven't enforced it.
I know, but
Okay.
I have sat in rooms and been yelled at by groups of business owners every time not every time, but when codes has gone out and tried to, start really ramping up their enforcement.
And do you show them where it is in the codes?
They don't care because then
It's conflict.
they don't get
You got
the
to deal
answer.
with conflict. I know, that's just it. I don't know.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is we uphold, we explain why it has to be, and we continue to send the letters and do what we're supposed to do, but we have to understand why we're doing this, and it's for the aesthetics of the community. And as far as the people that we're trying to help, they were kind of also having some challenges between discerning what was a violation and what was just an aesthetic that, that wasn't, I don't know, well-maintained, a sign that wasn't well-maintained or a paint color that wasn't appropriate or whatever.
Eileen?
Well, I know that when it comes to real estate signs, we certainly are uphold to a standard that if we do not adhere to those, they are pulled up and thrown away. So I know that's been something that we don't want to do too often. So I think that that's the way that we are held to that standard. So perhaps there's signage that can be removed from these businesses if they do not comply with these fines or their notifications.
But the only thing about that.
On private property.
Yeah,
Can't remove it.
right, you can't go on
Well,
private
the
property.
real estate signs are on private property.
Right away if
They're
removed.
right away, typically the ones,
And some of them are on right-of-ways and they get pulled up,
on right of ways, we can pull them up. On private property,
but they're not being pulled up.
How long have we had a sign ordinance?
Ever.
Ever since I've been here, it's been changed. a
These
couple of
signs, I
times.
got a feeling, been here 20, 30 years.
well, that's what he's saying. Do you want him to enforce the sign ordinance?
Yes.
Take them to court?
And I'm saying they are being enforced in some areas, but not all, so they should be, yes.
So if it's on private property, then there's nothing we can do about that.
There is something, there's a
Yeah,
process.
we send a letter, we give them a
It's
time
a
to
lengthy
comply,
process.
And
then we cite them again.
And then everybody that gets a letter calls and tells us about everywhere else it hasn't been enforced because they think that we can magically descend upon the whole city at the same time and get everybody cleaned up and straightened out. And it's a constantly revolving battle to give notice, send them to court, they pay their fine, they go, they do it again.
But it's going to be that way. It's going to be continuous, there's no doubt, because everybody's not going to obey.
And we're fine with it, he just,
It can be.
We are this county seat, and we should look that way. It should
That's
be.
right.
And the
Something I'm proud of.
building department, they can yank electric service, so they have a little more teeth, I guess.
Yeah.
And so a lot of these folks are just, it's not just that, it's junk vehicles, or on a lot of properties, there are vehicles. They may be under repair, but they've been on that property for years and years and years, and we can tell that by the aerial photos. So we have some service repair places where it's really they're operating like a junkyard. And that's a problem as well.
So are we all in agreement?
Yes.
We will vigorously start enforcing this. We'll send these cases to Connie and/or to the council, as is described in the municipal code. I don't know if y'all want to see them. No, I don't think so. So we're gonna we'll send them to Connie, but you're gonna get complaints. You're gonna get, as the mayor mentioned, people are gonna say, well, you're not enforcing it on this person. We're getting to them. So we can really step this up and, because they're all over the place.
but this discussion helps us all be able to say, we discussed it at council, we are, in agreement that we have to kind of crack down on our community and start getting it look better.
And Bill, if there's something that's in the municipal code that needs to be amended,
Oh, there's,
then we need to amend it.
yeah, our municipal code, we've had discussions about this, that all chapters are in dire need of revamping. I mean, it is just, there's some conflicts that I mentioned earlier with the presentation, so, that we need to work on.
Is there
Lots of stuff.
anything else you need from us?
No, if you want to see some more pictures, I'll be glad to go through these real quick.
Let's do it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Not some of these places.
How many hours did you spend gathering these?
We had 3 different folks gathering this stuff, the high grass, containers just out in the field or out in the yard, superfluous signs, banners, junk that got thrown on the sidewalk. No one claiming piles of junk here.
You did this in between picking up trash, right?
No, I didn't take most of these pictures at all.
What happened
Others
there?
took them. Somebody ran into that's on Southwater, ran into their post, so it needs to be repaired. Containers out there, containers are allowed, but they have to be permitted and they have to be tied down and so forth, so.
Bill, let me ask you one question. When you get into the junk car issue, are you saying that, is there a certain amount of time that is going to be allowed? And then after that threshold, then,
Well, we look at the state statute calls them out as, they use it, automobile graveyards. So if a car, if it's not for sale, or on a sales lot, and it's not licensed, it'd be sitting in somebody's yard without an active license plate. You may have the tires are flat and the weeds are growing up around it. So it's essentially an abandoned vehicle or junk car. We have lots, repair lots even, where they're just stacked up over and over, not literally necessarily stacked on one of each other, but just all over the yard, and they haven't been moved in years. And we can tell that from aerial photos. They don't have a license tag. They're not awaiting repair. They're just being stored out there is like a junkyard. So we do allow parking of vehicles in industrial zones like that, and then the city code has some design standards that probably should be in the zoning code to require fencing around it so you don't have to see those things. The state law has even more restrictions when they're located in close proximity to a state highway. So all these things need to kind of be looked at again and reformed, and either put into the zoning code and/or the municipal code where they're consistent with one another.
Keep us posted.
All right, thank you.
Hey, whip through here real quick. There's a bunch of them.
He wants to show his I think that
We're
we
good.
agree that it looks junk, it look bad. Yeah. Thank you for presenting that way.
Gonna come up on
All
State
right.
Farm in a minute.
Next, we have Ms. Susan Hyde McCauley.
Yes, I have before you tonight a resolution to allow the mayor to execute a lease agreement with Holloway Investments LLC. This was brought up a few weeks ago, and you were kind of ambivalent about it at the time, but asked me to bring a proposed lease agreement back, and I've done that. I've placed it on your desk. I'll just kind of go through some of hit the highlights. So this is for the Enloe Street parking lot, and it's behind some buildings that are on North Water. It's for a term of 20 years. Right now, I have it to begin on July 1st of this year and ending on June 30th of 2041, $10 per year for those 20 years. The use of the premises is for public parking, city parking, events, training, temporary storage, and placement of dumpsters. Now, what the crux of this is, this parking area, this parking lot is in disrepair right now. It's in very bad shape. And it's going to cost, last I heard, and Richard, I don't know if anything's been updated, about $52,000 to make alterations and improvements to that lot. There's got to be a retaining wall built. We've got to build it up, pave it, stripe it. I think it's going to be about 18 to 20 parking spots, I believe. I'm not an engineer, and I didn't do any of that part of it. But it's mainly for public parking is the purpose. It's not assignable without us agreeing to it. One of the things that I want to mention is that either party can terminate with 90 days' notice, but if Holloway Investments decides that they want to terminate the lease, then they're going to have to reimburse the city the cost of the repair. So we're going to have to maintain our records to show what we paid to improve that lot. And for each year after the lease, it will reduce by 5%. Those costs will. And the only other thing that I put in here that I want to point out to you, I think Holloway Investments had requested that they be permitted to use that lot and close it down with notice, and discussed in the department head meeting with the mayor today that I think because we're using public funds on this lot, that if we're going to allow that, we need to severely limit that. And so we've allowed 4 days out of the year with 14 days' notice to be brought before council like we do any other closure, to allow them to close it for 4 days out of the year for an event they might be having at one of their properties.
was he only asking for like 4 days of the year? Is that what you're
He
saying? Or
didn't-
that's what we're willing to
He
do?
did not
That was,
He did not limit it. He just said he wanted to be able to close it. And I was not involved in any of the negotiations, so I wasn't there. But the email that I got from him said he wanted to be able to give us 7 days' notice and to be able to use the lot for his event, for an event. So I just think, because we're using public funds, that, you know, we've got to severely limit the
Yeah.
ability to do that.
Okay, I agree. So,
Richard, how much is that going to cost now?
The original estimate was $52,000. I mean, it's in bad shape. There's a lot of the grade coming off of Enlow Street is very steep, so we'll have to be cutting it back. The base of it, I mean, we're gonna have to, it'll be a severe undercut and building back up from the base all the way up. I think that estimate's pretty good, just looking at the numbers. Prices of everything, as y'all well know, has went up, but I believe that number is fairly safe, the 52,000. There's 22 parking spots is what we have designed right now. The one question I had, Susan, I was looking through that contract, was about when the contract ends, that it would have to be returned to, I didn't understand if that was to
Well,
a state or what.
it's typical in leases that you say you return it in the same condition that you got it in. So the reason I didn't change that, we don't want to have to return it. We want to, when we're done with it, we have to make these repairs, and I don't know, I guess we'd have to fill potholes, but we certainly don't want to be held to having to
Redo it
repay.
again.
Yes,
Okay.
exactly.
Does that figure that you just gave, does that include the retaining wall?
Yes.
I'll make a motion that we approve, but do we need to put the amendment in there for the 14-day and?
The lease that I provided you has all of that in there.
Okay, I'll make a motion that we approve.
I'll second it.
Okay, we've got a motion by Councilman Hayes and a second by Councilman Fennell. Is there any more discussion on this?
We're gonna need the parking with this jail going on and everything else. We're gonna need it.
We know how many parking places that his business will take up every day?
Well, I've not allowed any in the lease for his business. I mean, I guess if they get there,
Right.
they can park
And he-
there, but we're not going to reserve spots for his businesses.
And his business is kind of a come and go type, it's like, it's not somebody shows up at 8 o'clock and stays there till 5. It's people, his plan for his business would be people that would be using it intermittently. And I think he said maybe he thought he might have 6 or 7 using it on a daily basis, but not an all day long type basis. So it, in essence, is just first come, first serve. His people can park there, any other people can park there. So,
All right, well, any more discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Okay, any opposed? All right, that passes. Thank you. Thank you, Susan. Thank you, Richard. Okay, now, let's see, we're ready for our last item on the agenda is in discussion on the expert panel
Yeah.
that John D.
And
brought.
this will be very, very quick. I just want to ask Ms. Flood a question if she could come. Just for me, how does this operate? And the reason why I said that, I know it used to be for, like, the department head position came open, we put it out and people would apply. And then you get a group.
I've just handed you the resolution, so that explains the process, but Ms. Flood can explain to you also.
Okay, go ahead then. I forgot my train of thought. Go ahead.
Resolution that you've been given, the normal process is the HR department posts the position, applicants apply, and then the HR department is responsible for narrowing them down. And we look at minimum requirements. Once that list is created, that goes on to an expert panel.
The expert panel will be,
Well, in the situation that I believe you were talking about, it's for the opening of the fire chief.
No, it's anybody. It's for all.
Any of them?
All department heads.
So we.
Connie, it's kind of hard to hear.
in the mic.
Thank you.
We look for people that's on the panel that have years of experience in their profession, usually is what we look for.
So do you already, I guess what I'm asking, do you already have an expert panel?
For our open position for the fire chief?
Yeah, if we, any department heads, do we have like a set group of people that?
With each
would go
opening
with
for
this?
department head, the panel would be different because of the expertise that falls under their profession.
Well, and also explain, that you have to vet your panel based on the applicants, because you don't want to put somebody on the panel that may have, say, someone from their city applying.
That is correct.
So,
You don't want a conflict.
But I want to make it clear that our charter, and I understand why we do this, and I voted for it, but our charter says that 5 of us hiring fire department heads, and so that doesn't mean just because the expert panel recommends it, we can't recommend somebody else.
So the resolution is the policy by which you hire, but yes, there's nothing even in the resolution that says the recommendation is the final say.
Right.
But Jimmy, didn't we go off of the recommendation when we hired the last hire that we
Yes,
made?
we did. And that's why I'm saying that our charter says that we.
Wait. Are you saying, yes, we used the recommendation from the
I thought the
last?
panel recommended the other candidate and we chose.
No,
Interviewed them.
no,
We interviewed them.
their recommendation was that the, two candidates were essentially a tie. Now, when she actually added the scores up, there were a few points difference.
That's right.
but-
That's
She
what I'm
told
talking
us
about,
that
yeah.
the other
But-
candidate
You're right.
scored higher.
But she didn't, when you actually gave the recommendation to this council, you hadn't added the scores up. You just took what the expert panel had told you, which was that you had two candidates and they had different strengths and weaknesses, and they considered them equivalent, so.
But my only point is if we don't agree with the expert panel, there's nothing that says we have to hire that person.
That's correct. The policy doesn't say that the person that is recommended must be voted on.
Yeah, and I want to be clear too, the question was asking me at some point, do we have to vote on who the panel recommends? And I said, I think that would be courteous. I'm not saying you elect who they recommend. I'm just saying that it is appropriate, it would be courteous to vote up or down who their recommendation might be, or to, pick based on their recommendation. I do feel very, very strongly about the use of an expert panel and letting them be the experts in a qualified person for our city. I certainly, I use IT frequently as an example because I know y'all did, and y'all did a great job. It was before I was here. But I can't imagine us trying to make heads or tails of some of the, technical verbiage that we're unfamiliar with. I mean, it would be like me trying to hire a mechanic for Mr. Fennell. I would be.
And it's like, y'all have heard me say this, I've been on here longer than anybody for many years, and I know John's been on here a year or two less than me, but we went through a period of time where we had a mayor, we were firing everybody, weren't we?
Oh, I didn't vote.
But anyway, and it was like, for no reason, but to me, when you do the expert panel, it takes the politics out of it. Let's face it, you get a friend that wants a job, it's hard not to vote for that friend for that job. And it's like you just said, it's hard for me, I couldn't go hire a mechanic. Sean couldn't hire somebody to sell insurance for me.
I think it's a
I
nice
can't hire a
balance.
fire. I don't know what a fireman does. I mean, I know he puts out fires.
I think a panel
But
can look
it
at.
takes the politics out of it. That's what you want to do. You want to take the politics out of it.
But that's the reason why they always give us a bio on the candidate for you to read and study it.
Mm-hmm.
So it doesn't matter if, I don't have, maybe expertise on certain thing, but if you can give me some paper where I can read it and study it,
Yeah.
I think I would have enough common sense to vote the one that's most qualified.
That's where the expertise, the experts give you that to read.
Well, no, he's talking about reading their resumes and stuff, and
But in essence, we don't really ever have a permanent expert panel.
No, it wouldn't be, it would not be
have it.
appropriate. So, and I mean, typically, like, I don't even know who's on
Can't
your
have a
expert
permanent.
panel for the fire chief, but it's, I think, some fire chiefs and a city manager.
The policy requires, Councilman Alexander,
I'd like
that
to
the
know
expert
how we're
panel.
gonna select the panel. Who selects it?
HR.
Who? HR?
Sure.
And it's
Are you
based
going out
on,
of town? Is it gonna be in town or both?
I'm looking at 3 fire chiefs. One has approximately 28 years of experience. The second fire chief has 29 years of experience, and the last one has over 38 years of experience. And then I'm looking at a city manager that has over 35 years of experience, all highly qualified to represent the
So
city
you're
in
using
helping
a
with the
four-panel-
selection.
A four-panel jury, for lack of a better word.
No, nobody's. Evaluation team.
But it's still a jury. They're gonna decide if he's good or not.
All from surrounding towns, I guess, or somewhere, not Gallatin.
Middle Tennessee, yes.
Sumner County.
Large cities, not real small cities, or comparable to what we have here.
One is close in size to Gallatin. One's one of the fire chiefs that's from a larger city, yes.
Do we know when this will happen? It seems like we need to move.
We're going to move quickly, yes. Going to move it forward, yes.
I think at this point they have the resumes that HR vetted, and they're in their evaluation process. And did you give them a time frame in which to evaluate and select an interview group?
I hope to have results back by Friday
Oh,
from
okay.
them.
Okay, and then we'll be able to move forward with interviews.
Yes, that is correct.
Do they have any more questions? Did that answer? Well, thank you, Connie.
You're welcome.
Hey, that ends our agenda. And now, does anyone on this council have any other business?
I do.
I do.
All right.
And I got them numbered so I won't mess up. Okay, because I like to take notes. Number 1, thank you, Richard, for finally getting Gray Street started. People have called me for months and months and months about Gray Street. When is something gonna be done to Gray Street? So I was glad to see that payment out there today. Thank you so much, I appreciate you. And then on Saturday, May the 8th, we had a fire on 694 Anthony Street. Older couple was burned out, and fire department came. And this fire started on the back of the house, but smoke was coming all around the house, all up in the top. Every time I got there, we had fire trucks everywhere. Well, excuse me, our fire department, how they did it, I don't know. But they went directly where the fire was, and they done little or no damage to the house at all. The people that were standing around were just amazed that they knew pretty much exactly where to go. And a lot of the firefighters, after they put the fire out, came and talked to the citizen, talked to the elderly couple that was burned out. And that made me feel so good that you know, because they didn't, you know, their job is to put out the fire. They didn't have to talk to the citizen, but that meant so much. More than one of the firefighters came and talked to this elderly couple, you know, sorry about your loss, anything we can do, you know, let us know. And so I appreciate that. And then I was so glad to see our Fire Chief Tracy come out and talk to the men to make sure everything was doing good, talk to the family on more than one occasion to, you know, express their concern and the care. So I was just so proud of the fire department this past weekend, because the person's house that got burned was a real close friend of mine. And I just appreciate that more than you know. I was so proud to be a council person of the 5th District. I said, you know, that's my fire team right there. So thank you. Because, you know, we can always criticize people when they're not doing the right thing. So let's kind of give them credit when they do a good job. So thank you so much. I appreciate it. All right, that's all I have.
I agree. Thank you, John D. Eileen?
Thank you. My question is, I know that the planning commission meeting started at 5. is any reason why we start at 6? And is there a reason why we couldn't go at 5?
You know, history, you know how, do anybody know why we started at 6? Because we used to do it at 7.
Oh, my goodness, I don't want to do it at 7.
Difficult for people to.
We used to start at 7 o'clock.
Right.
Oh.
And the reason why it was changed, I was hoping nobody never would ask that question. But the reason why it was changed, I'll tell you next meeting. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just
You're
kidding.
gonna
I'm
hold us in
just kidding.
suspense.
No, I used to, when I first got on the council, I worked at Donald Printing Company, and I would go in to work at 7 o'clock. And I had asked about changing the time to 6 to give me an hour before I went to work. That's how it really got changed.
Well, I'm glad you changed it to 6.
And you had an hour meeting, huh?
No, but I could come and stay a while and then go to work.
Oh, okay.
I think it's maybe difficult for some people to get here by 5 o'clock. I mean, it's whatever the council wants to do. We'd need to amend we have an ordinance, it's in our code. We'd have to change that.
I'm the only one that's not retired. I leave work at 5, so I mean, it's hard for me to get
You're the only one.
I'm not retired either.
I don't, yeah, you're not the only one that's not
Joe said you
retired.
were
Do a lot less, we're not retired.
I have something, Linda.
Well, does that answer your question, Eileen?
Yeah, I guess.
Hey, Paige?
Sharing my screen again, Ms. Nichols informed me of an error that I had in my presentation. And it's funny because, oh, man. Uh-oh, what are you doing to me there? You can look at Bill's pictures while you look at this. And ironically, it's about Councilman Alexander's inquiry. So according to her, and we had discussed this some time ago, and I thought I had it straight on my spreadsheet. Are you lurking over me? Where'd Jeff go? Oh, he's over there. I thought he came up behind me. There, Bill didn't stop sharing his screen. That's what happened. So I thought that I had it correct in my notes when we met about this. There were actually 2 codes positions that were reclassified last year, and therefore we're not reclassifying them again. And then there are 2 that were not reclassified last year, and we are reclassifying them this year. So one goes, one codes inspector 3 goes to a 4 at GT1, and one goes to a code inspector 4 at GT2. So that is what is actually included and funded in the budget per Ms. Nichols. Just so you know.
Good job,
Okay,
Ms.
but they weren't on
Nichols.
there a while ago.
Glad you set her straight, Ms. Nichols, thank you.
Me too.
Did you just change that? I mean, that's.
Yes, I changed that.
Okay.
Thank you.
That's already
Okay, department heads? Any department heads want to say anything? Well, I see none. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Right, we do, from Councilman Alexander. So good night, everybody.